Okay, so hi everyone. So I'm June. I'm an undergraduate at UCLA, and my partner is Annie, and she's a graduate student at
So
UCLA.
one thing you do to yourself right here, so you don't have to actually click.
Anyone need a laser pointer?
I've got one here, yeah, so if you want that one.
So as Dr. Evans has said, we're going to first go over a general introduction of neuroscience, how the nervous system works, and the general introduction of drugs. And then we're going to break out into different categories of drugs.
Don't laugh at me.
So to start off, I want to ask you all a question. What do you think, what is the brain? Can anyone tell me? Yeah.
An organ that is responsible for controlling all the other organs.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, so yeah, so the brain is basically the control center of your brain. So the brain is the reason why you have thoughts, you can learn, you can remember things, or you can unconsciously breathe without thinking about it. So some facts about the brain. The brain contains 1 trillion cells, and that's a lot. A trillion. You didn't know. And one neuron, or the building block of the brain, can have up to 1,500 synapses. And synapses are connections that different neurons have with each other. So one neuron can have 1,500 connections. Another thing is that the brain has the consistency of a hard jello. So you'll see later on when you break out into different groups that if you want to touch it, you'll see that it has a consistency of a hard jello. And last thing, a fun fact is that when you're awake, your brain has produces enough electricity to power a small light bulb. So this is the structure of a neuron. So just going over the basic structure. The left side, as you can see, there's a nucleus and dendrites. And this is where information coming to a neuron goes in the neuron. And from there, the information goes down what we call the axon. And it goes down to the axon terminal where the information outputs.
Yeah, buckle your seatbelts.
So synapses. These are the connections between neurons, and this is how we communicate. So as you can see here, there's a sending neuron that's communicating a signal down to the synapse. And when the electrical signal goes down to the synapse, it turns into a chemical signal that gets released onto this space right here. And these chemical signals bind onto the receptors of the receiving neuron. And that's basically how neurons communicate and send messages to each other. So this is an example of how a neurotransmitter, or the chemical signals that I talked about, binds to receptors on the receiving neuron. So the analogy that we often like to use is the lock and key method. So as you can see here, A and B are examples of neurotransmitters, and there's a receptor right here. So which one do you think will be able to bind to the receptor, A or B? Yeah, A, right? So just due to the shape of the key A binds to the receptor and B cannot bind to the receptor. And A binding to the receptor causes a certain action on your brain and your body. So serotonin and dopamine are some of the neurotransmitters that we'll be talking about in our drug presentations. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but these are neurotransmitters that are involved in reward, mood, pleasure and pain, and learning and memory. So these modulate these types of functions that you have in your body. So now going into some introduction of drug use, abuse, and addiction. We have many types of drug categories that we could talk about, such as opiates, hallucinogens, stimulants, and depressants. But we don't have enough time in this period to go over everything, so we selected a few drugs to talk about in this period. Yeah. So I want to ask you all, why do you think people take drugs?
Getting high.
Influence?
Influence? Getting high?
Getting excited.
Getting excited? Anything else? To fit in. So these are all really good suggestions. So as you all listed here, people take drugs to feel good, to fit in. Sometimes people take it to because of curiosity, to escape reality, for medical reasons such as to help with illness, to relieve pain, but also to enhance performance, such as that guy here, who takes steroids, which is also a form of drug that people don't really know about as a drug. And these are all different reasons why people actually take drugs. And one of the parts of the brain that I want to talk about before we start the drug presentations is the reward pathway. And just to let you guys know, different parts of the brain has different specialized functions. And one part of the brain that processes rewards is the reward pathway in the brain. And this part of the brain is responsible for the happy reward feeling that you get when you get an A on a test, or eat your favorite food, or I guess win the lottery if you win the lottery. These are reward. This part of the brain modulates that rewarding feeling. So one thing that I want to go over is that drugs can change your brain circuitry. So what drugs do on your brain is that drugs can hijack this reward pathway that we have in our brain, and it kind of changes the natural connections that we have in our brain, which causes a variety of consequences, such as social consequences. And one of the consequences that it has on the brain and yourself is addiction. So in addiction you have cycles of pleasure and pain. And basically you're no longer in control of yourself, as a drug has taken over your brain circuitry and your body. So as you can see with this picture here, you start out with pleasure, but you also feel pain when you're not taking the drug, and it's up to you to escape this consequence called addiction. So when you're in addiction, you're no longer in control, and the drug controls you. So that was the introduction to neuroscience and drug addiction, and we're going to go into date rape drugs next.
So, does anyone know what a trillion would be like?
What a what?
Trillion nerve cells. How could you fit a trillion nerve cells into this brain? They have to be incredibly small, right? Microscopic. And do you know any idea what a trillion would be?
How do you visualize a trillion?
How do you visualize a trillion? I mean, that's just words. If I filled this whole school with Skittles, you know those little Skittles, that would be about a trillion. The whole school. That's about how many brain cells you've got in there. I know, it's a lot. What? It's a lot.